Hello and welcome everybody, it's Karen. Thanks for stopping by. I'm doing a little bit of a different video. I was sent this laminator by QFun and was asked to do a review on it, and since I love making laminated cards, I totally agreed to this one. So if you've already got a laminator and you don't want to see this, skip ahead to the 1 minute and 15-second mark and I'll start laminating things there. But you can see on this one, it's got a really nice wide opening to put your folders through, which for me is great because I often put them through crookedly and then they get jammed up. So I did like that about it. Now in the top, it's got this wonderful compartment that comes with the paper trimmer. This is a hole punch, and then here we've got a corner rounder, which is so good to have for acetate because it's always got such sharp corners. And then there are 3 little binder rings here to attach your projects together. It did come with the whole pack of laminating pouches in different sizes. Now to turn it on, you turn the button at the bottom and then adjust to whatever setting you want with the top button. So there is a cold setting, which I believe is for photos, and a 3mm and a 5mm setting. So I'm going to start by laminating some cardstock. So here I've cut this piece of cardstock down into the little rectangles. And just to spice it up, I'm going to add some Distress Rock Candy Glitter. And so you don't actually see this in the video, I'm sorry. It's sort of, you can see it between the papers, but you don't see it on them. But I'm just putting all of that in there. Now, because I'm always using glitter or pastes or something different in my laminating folders, I tend to put them in a carrier sheet, which in this case is just a piece of copy paper I folded in half, but you can use parchment paper as well. And that just contains things in case they spill out. That's my thought on it anyway. So here I've laminated this so you can see between the little rectangles that there's some glitter there. Here I've cut from some pattern paper, double-sided pattern paper, some flowers, and I'm going to put them inside my laminating pouch. And this time I'm going to add some Stampendous Shaved Ice because this has kind of a pretty purpley blue pinkish tone to it against white cardstock, and I thought that would be quite pretty with those flowers. So again, I've got that in my carrier sheet and I'll fold that over. And then I just run that through, and this is how it came out, which is really quite pretty, I thought. So you can see against the white, it's sort of got that pinky, bluey, purple tone. Okay, now these are some leaves. Now, I did this last fall, and I saw this on the internet somewhere, and I apologize because I no longer remember where I found it. But I found these leaves on the ground. You cover them with glue. I happen to use this Nuvo glue, but any clear drying glue would work, I think. And that sort of protected the leaf. And then I sprinkled embossing powder on and heat set it. And so this is how they turned out. And so I'm going to try this again in the fall, but just get some different shaped leaves, I think. So I thought that was really quite fun. But you can see there's a fair bit of dimension to these. You know, they sort of bend and warped a little bit. So I thought I'd put them in the laminating folder and see how they did. So because I had already got some gold embossing powder on, I'm putting some of this Distress Glitter Dust. This is in Vintage Platinum, this color. And I'm just sprinkling that on the background, and then I'll put the leaf on front and cover it up. And then I will run that through in the carrier pouch again. And here's how it turned out. So I was really impressed with this. I was worried that that laminating folder wouldn't seal, but it completely sealed. And there was a bit of bulk to that leaf, so you know, I thought that was really very good. And kind of a fun way to preserve your leaves. Okay, so I've opened up a laminating pouch here, and I've got my stencil, and I'm just going to use my Versamark ink pad to go through the stencil so you can see it there. And I'm going to sprinkle on this, the same Vintage Platinum glitter dust from Distress. And it makes quite a mess to start with. As you can see here, there's glitter everywhere where I didn't want it. So you have to really turn it over and smack it quite hard on the back to get rid of some of that. And I even used a brush for some areas. Now when you go to put your pouches together, you always want that shiny side out. So the dull side goes in against the other side. And then I, of course, put it in this piece of copy paper, and this is how it turned out. So it was really quite pretty. It's so clear and see-through, you can use either side, so you can do it landscape or portrait, whichever way you want it to go. Okay, so off camera I sampled a few things. Here is some Lawn Fawn chunky glitter. It's got quite a color to it. It's not a white one, but it laminated well. Next to it is the Distress Rock Candy, which I used with those little bunny or Easter images. This is a dollar store micro glitter, and then this was a chunky glitter. And I wasn't sure how that would do, but it actually laminated fairly well. So it's not coming out, it's in there. There's a little bit of air pocket around some of the bigger particles, but it worked quite well. Now that is the Walmart silver glitter. There's the Distress glitter dust that I have already used. Next to it are the Distress mica flakes, and those are beautiful. I've done other cards with those in, and I really do like them. And that is the Stampendous Shaved Ice. Now I thought I would sprinkle some embossing powders in and see what happened to those. I wasn't too happy with them. They stayed in and the pouch is laminated, but the embossing powders didn't set, so they should have been metallics and they really don't look it. At the end here, that is a Cosmic Shimmer embossing sprinkles. And so they are meant to be more lumpy, snow-like. They're chunky little pebbles of embossing powder. Okay, so then I thought I would try some paste. So I've got my stencil and I am using these Lustre polished pastes. I'm just pushing them through with a palette knife, and then I'll peel this up. Now you have to let these dry, 100% let them dry. Do them the day before and let them dry overnight. And you'll see why you have to do that, because I'll show you my mistakes. So this is some Luna paste. It's got fairly big chunks of mica in it, especially that darker purple color. And so I wanted to see how this would do. And so here it is just after stenciling. And you'll see on the back, it's a darker color on the back than on the front. So after laminating, here is this one. Now, I had a problem with this. I sort of jammed it in the laminator. I had an edge that was a bit sticky and it didn't go through. But it's still set. It's still, you can see the paste kept its shape. Here's what happens if you don't let it dry. So luckily I had this in a carrier pouch. So it's all on the inside of that paper, but yeah, definitely put these aside to dry overnight. And here is this one, and it sealed up really well also. So I was really happy with that, and either side could be used. Okay, and so off camera I did some more paste. So that first pink one is a Nouveau Glacier paste. Then it's a Brutus Monroe glitter glaze, and finally those are Stickles glitter glue. Now all of these I did set aside to dry. I did some by brushing on with a palette knife and the others with a stencil, so clearly you can do different things with these. But I thought that was kind of fun to show you that. Now you can also use inks on the inside of these, but it should be a pigment ink. Dye inks just will not work. I tried it. They just kind of fade out and they disappear somehow. So here I'm using a Hero Arts Unicorn White pigment ink. I've done a script stamp and stamped onto my embossing folder. I set it aside to dry, and this is it after laminating. Now I did have those areas where I hadn't really pressed hard enough to get the stamp to stamp, but you can see, you can read the words, you can see through it, and it's really quite fun to do that. Here I'm stamping with Versamark ink, and I'm going to apply this gold glitter powder, or embossing powder, to it. So I've stamped there with the Versamark ink, and I am going to sprinkle on the embossing powder here. And again, it will go quite messy, and you have to really work to tap this off and clean it up a bit. So you can see all that mess there. So after a few good taps, most of it had come off, and I was okay with how it ended up. Now, what's different here is I am heat embossing this with my heat gun. So you have to make sure you're moving your heat gun around, but these are pretty heat tolerant laminating pouches. They're going to go through a laminator. So I heat set this first, and then I'm going to apply some alcohol inks. Now you could just apply the ink direct to the laminated acetate there, but I chose to put this on a little felt pad this time. I hadn't done this for a while, so I thought that might be fun to do. But I have done it where you just blow the ink around, and that works too. Now I did let the ink dry, and I am putting it in a carrier pouch just in case. And this is how it came out, and I decided to put this through one more time on its own, just because I had heat set it and I wasn't sure how well that pouch would seal. But you can see it sealed up really quite well there. Okay, now these are those extra bits of foil that we all have. I laminate these because it's so easy. And you can do either hot foil or reactive foil in a laminating pouch. You just put them in, run it through. I don't put it in a carrier pouch, nothing's going to come out, so I just put that through as it is. And this is how it comes out. And so you can do these ahead of time, have them set aside to use when you need a piece of foil. Pretty easy. Okay, so on to the card making. So I have 3D embossed this piece of Shimmer gold cardstock, and I am going over with the white pigment ink on the raised surfaces. Now I'm going to use this piece of glitter laminate, and I'm just going to score right along the left-hand side there. I am going to turn this one into a trifold card. So I'm just trying to get a seam here, so I'm folding that to the back, and then I'm really going to burnish that. Give it a good press. And now I have a card. It's a 5.5-inch square card. This will be the first layer of my trifold card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim it off first, and then I will put some double-sided tape on that seam that I just made. So you can see the red line tape there. So my card is actually facing backwards. The fold is on the right, but I'm going to attach this on this side. So now I can remove the release paper, and I'm going to line up that laminate along the very bottom edge and along where the fold line is. And press it down. And then I like to really burnish these. It sort of helps make that adhesive disappear a bit. And then on the inside I'll put this embossed piece and my sentiment. Now on the back we still have this messy thing, so you could just put a piece of cardstock over that and be done. I had already made a second one of these when I was practicing for the video, so I thought instead of wasting that I was going to put that on the back, so I've trimmed it down and I'm putting glue all over where the glitter is, and I will cover that up with that. Now I know somebody's going to say you can't use glue on acetate, because I've had that before, but you can. You just have to let it set up a bit longer. So I stick it under acrylic blocks and just let the glue set up. So there's the back. It's, quite pretty because it sort of continues the front pattern. And there's the trifold card. So it will stand up and that little acetate piece sort of goes in front. And there it is. Okay, now with those little squares or rectangles that I had, I've got a piece of pattern paper, and now the back of my card is 4 3/4 by 5.5 tall, and I don't have to score that one, but here I've got 2 more pieces that are 3 3/4 inches by 5.5, and I am scoring these every 3/4 of an inch. So at 3/4, 1.5, 2 1/4, and at 3 inches. And I will do that for both of these pieces of cardstock. And then I can fold these down. They're all going to be mountain folds, and I'm just going to really burnish them. And that will make this little square pillar that we're going to attach. So I have folded down that first fold, put some glue on it, and then I can fold this right in half and press that together. So that should make 2 of these squares. Now I usually do this on the seam side, but I'm putting glue on one side of this square, and I will attach it so it lines up right along that long edge on the left and between the top and bottom. And you can fold these down. I find that easier because then you can really see that everything has lined up well. And give it a good press. And then we'll do the same thing on the right hand edge. And so this is going to give us a pillar card, sort of a pillar card I guess, that will stand up but it will fold down flat to go in an envelope. So with my background paper, I have trimmed it down. Now I never measure, but I know I made the height of this just a bit under 5.5 inches, and the width of those little panels was a bit under 3/4 of an inch. And then the middle one I made fit in between. And I've just added that spring green cardstock to the sides. Now this is a scrap piece of acetate, and I have cut it to be just a little bit under the width of the back. I've put some red line tape on it, and just because that red line tape is so sticky, I'm putting a little bit of glue so I've got some wiggle room. Now I'm going to put this at the bottom, so I will line this up with the edge, the left-hand edge of that pattern paper, and press that down. So I've pressed that left square pillar down, and I'm pressing the right square pillar down. They both are going to fold down to the right, and then you're going to press that. So now this will stay flat when I mail it. And then when you pop those pillars up, you have this perfect little piece of acetate. So in order to attach these images to it, I needed to know where to put the red light tape. So I just flipped them over and put them where I think I want them to go. And then you can see where you need to put the tape instead of trying to guess. So I'm going to put this one down in the corner. Now this card, I changed it up. I wasn't happy with it. So you'll see what I did first, and then I'll show you at the end how it is now. So I'm just putting these across the bottom. It stands up perfectly. And then I had some little sprigs of bouquets here that I'm just tucking in behind and gluing those in place. And then finally I added a sentiment across the top. So you'll see in a minute how this changed. Now I made this one off camera. I don't really like this one either. But I wanted to do this to show you that on those pillars, depending on which way you fold it, if you go to the right, that bunny will stick out. But if you fold it down to the left, then those will both fit into the envelope. So you can offset things a bit with this pillar form of card. Now here's what I did. I took that middle image out. I didn't like that it obscured that whole little scene there, that church and the sort of farmland. So I've just added in a few more of those bouquets, and that's how I left this card in the end. Okay, now for the next card, I used my hexagon dies. I've taken the biggest one and I have cut a piece of background in that blue, and I've made a frame. I think I went down to the third or fourth smaller die. I'm not entirely sure how big that was. But I've cut the acetate or the laminate with the largest die, and I'm putting little bits of foam tape around the edges. This is going to be a shaker card. Seems kind of obvious with something that's clear and see-through, so I thought I would do it. So I'm just putting my mix inside. I've taken the release papers off, and then I can attach the back to that and give it a good press. And so there's the shaker. Now you could just put this frame right on as it is, but I wanted a bit more depth to mine because I just felt like I wanted it to float off the background a bit. So I've taken scraps of cardstock. They are 2.5 inches tall, and I did that because these will fit between the hexagon sections there. So if you did a square or a rectangle or some other shape, you just want the height to be whatever is going to fit on the walls of your frame. And I'm scoring this at 3/8 of an inch and all along every other 3/8 of an inch. And then you only need 3 of these sections, so I end up getting rid of that part. So I've got 3 3/8 of an inch sections, and I'm just going to accordion fold that. And that's all I did for my spring frame. So this is the back. Now it's the same size, it's the largest one, and it's the same size as the blue. I'm scoring that. I don't remember if I did 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch. I think that's 1/4 of an inch. And that is just to attach to the top. So I've put some glue on it, and I know the top of my card is at the left there where it's going to go, and I'm just lining up all the other edges. Once you've got it there, you can press that down and seal it. And so now I've got a back on my card, and it will stand up. Now for the spring frame, I'm just attaching each of these in between each section of that hexagon with a bit of glue and pressing it down. So I just went all around. If you had a square or rectangle, just go all around that. And then I'm putting some glue on the other part of the spring, and I'm attaching the frame right down to it. So I sort of went around tucking everything in, and again, because it's gluing down to the acetate, I put this up under some glass or acrylic blocks rather, and just let it set up before I decorated the front of it. So there's that card. It's kind of fun that it's a shaker, and it's got a bit of depth to that frame now. Now for this card, the hardest part was deciding which side of this piece to use, quite honestly. I have a 5.5 inch square card that I've cut the height down to be 5 inches, so 5 inches tall by 5.5 across. And then I did that because on a scrap piece of cardstock, I spread some of this lunar paste and let it dry, and then I die cut the Celebrate, and then I laminated that in a small piece of laminating folder, and I've put some double-sided adhesive tape on the bottom so that I can attach that up above the top of my card. So it's kind of fun that that stands out at the top. And then this, I again put glue on the back of all the glitter. Tried to make sure I got it right around the edges so the edges were really well stuck down. And again, lined it up, and then I put this under some acrylic blocks to really set up. And then I just had a little die cut embellishment to add to the front of that, and that was that card. So I thought this one was really quite pretty. Like, that mica is so shiny, and then the acetate is shiny as well. So it's a very shiny card. Now off camera, I just made this card. It's a sympathy card. I die cut the opening and embossed that white piece with kind of a viney embossing folder, and then just added that sentiment, and I thought that was pretty simple. Now this was the piece that I had used the embossing powder, so I used the same stamp and embossed the background. I've die cut that opening, that circle, and added foam tape in behind it. And then I die cut the leaves and the butterflies all from that same piece of laminate, and just added a sentiment to that one. So that was all the time I had for making cards, everybody. I have a few pieces left to still do, but I hope I've given you some inspiration, and I will have a link to my laminated videos down below. I also have to say that after throwing everything at this laminator that I did, it handled everything really well, and I was quite impressed with it. So I will link to the laminator as well down below in case you're interested. Thank you so much for stopping by, everybody. I know that was a long video. I really appreciate you being here. I hope everybody's having a great day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.